Alright, settle down. Glad you made it back to the internet's weirdest corner. Hope you're ready, because I've spent way too much time scrolling through Reddit's underbelly to find some truly unhinged stories that will make you question everything. Seriously, hold on to your hats. And hey, if you're into this kind of chaotic nonsense, do me a solid and hit that like and subscribe button. It seriously helps me keep this circus going. Enough chatter, let's just get into this mess. I caught my girlfriend peeing in the kitchen sink. Really thought I was hallucinating. She says it's normal? Okay, I know how this sounds. I already tried to explain it to my brother, and he literally hung up the phone and just texted, laughing my ass off. I can't talk to anyone in real life about this, so I'm turning to Reddit, where you people at least pretend to listen before judging me. So yeah, as the title says, I caught my girlfriend peeing in the kitchen sink. Not squatting near it, not cleaning something up, full on pants down, squatting on the counter like a cat, pissing into the sink while scrolling TikTok. This happened 4 nights ago, and I still can't make sense of it. My brain keeps trying to swap the memory out with something less horrifying, like her getting kidnapped by a sink-obsessed doppelganger. But nope, it was her. Some context first, we've been dating for 11 months, moved in together in May. She's smart, funny, works in UX design, and drinks soup out of mugs. Quirky, yeah, but not in a piss-in-sinks way. Or so I thought. That night I came home early from work. She wasn't expecting me back until around 9, but I finished my client meeting early and dicked. I even stopped for Thai food because I wanted to surprise her. I walk in the front door and she doesn't hear me. She had AirPods in. I peek into the kitchen to set the food down quietly and boom. Standing on a step stool, perched like she's about to do some Cirque du Soleil move, pants at her ankles, pissing directly into the stainless steel basin. I froze. My brain stalled so hard it just went sink pee. She didn't even flinch, just looked over her shoulder, casual as anything, and goes, "Oh hey babe, sorry, didn't feel like going all the way to the bathroom." What the actual fuck? After a long, stunned silence, and her finishing her business like this was totally normal, I asked, very calmly, I might add, "Why?" She steps down like nothing happened, pulls her pants up, and says, "I always do this when I'm alone. It's faster. And it saves water." Reader, I wish I was joking. Saves water? Yeah, she said. Like, toilets use like 1.5 gallons per flush. It's such a waste. The sink already runs water. At this point I started laughing, but not because it was funny. More like my brain had to let the trauma out somewhere. She just kept unpacking Thai food like nothing had happened. We didn't talk about it much that night. I was weirdly stunned into silence, and she acted like it wasn't even worth revisiting. She said it was a low-effort habit, and made a joke about how guys pee outside all the time, so what's the difference? I slept terribly. I kept replaying the visual in my head. The little squat, the concentrated aim, the splash. I even cleaned the sink at 2 a.m. just to feel normal again. Okay, I'll admit something that makes me sound insane. I set up my phone to record the kitchen the next morning while I went for a run. I know, that's messed up. I deleted the video, but yeah, she did it again. Squatted, scrolled, peed. Like it was the most casual fucking thing in the world. I confronted her that night. I told her I didn't want to make her feel ashamed, but that I couldn't wrap my head around this. Like, what if guests use the sink? What if she does it when my mom visits? What if I accidentally make pasta in the pee zone? She told me I was being dramatic, that this was a personal habit, and that if I didn't like it, I didn't have to participate. I told her I didn't want to participate, I wanted it to stop. That's when she got kind of quiet, defensive. She told me that she started doing it during college, when her roommate used to take forever in the bathroom. She said it was just a thing that made life easier, that lots of people do it, and I'm being weird for freaking out. Now I'm sitting here wondering, am I the insane one? I googled adults who pee in sinks, and it turns out there's forums for this. People who say it's cleaner, better for the environment or whatever. But usually it's dudes. I've never heard of a grown woman squatting on a sink like it's a bidet with dreams. My friends would roast me for the rest of my life if I told them. And yet, I still love her, I think. But I also gagged while brushing my teeth in the bathroom because I kept imagining our cereal bowls slowly absorbing the memory of asparagus pea. She hasn't done it since we argued. Or maybe she has, and she's just sneakier. She's acting normal. But I'm not. I'm jumpy. I'm paranoid. I watched her rinse grapes this morning and wondered if they were being baptized in leftover urine residue. I know some couples break up over cheating, finances, emotional abuse, and I'm sitting here spiraling over pea logistics. But it's more than that. It's the casualness of it, the total lack of embarrassment. Like I found out my partner was secretly licking our Tupperware clean with her whole tongue and then putting them away, and when I asked about it, she just shrugged and went, how do you unsee that? She says she's open to compromise. She offered to only do it if I'm not home. But I live here, I use the sink, I make rice in that sink. I fill our dog's water bowl from that sink. I thaw meat in that sink. I can't just unapee the sink. And now I'm the bad guy? I don't want to throw away a good relationship over something as silly as this. But I also feel fundamentally grossed out in my own kitchen. Like something sacred has been defiled. Like I can hear the sink whispering, her pee was here. Has anyone else ever dealt with this? Is there a way back from this? Please someone tell me I'm not insane, or tell me I am. Honestly, I'll take either at this point. Edit. Okay, wow, I did not expect this to blow up. A few things. Yes, she wipes. She's not just marinating in her own stream. She uses toilet paper. Still gross emo. No, she doesn't poop in the sink. Dear God. For everyone saying dump her immediately, I appreciate the drama. But it's not that simple. We have a dog together. We're in a lease. We love each other. I did ask her if she'd consider using a portable camping urinal instead. She laughed like I was joking. I wasn't. Still figuring things out. I've moved the dish drying rack to the other side of the counter for now. Small wins. Holy crap, man. I'm not even going to lie, my jaw is on the floor after reading that. It's so unbelievably unhinged. The casualness of it is what gets me. I'm just going to squat on the counter while scrolling TikTok like it's the most normal thing in the world. That's next level. Insane logic. You're not the bad guy here, and you're definitely not crazy. That's a fundamental level of weirdness that most people just can't get past, especially in a shared space. Your reaction is completely justified. You know, you think you've heard it all, but believe me, the internet always has more to offer. So let's just dive right into the next story because this one is a classic "you've got to be kidding me" moment. I stole a car once and accidentally made a guy's marriage better. Kind of. I think. This happened like 7 years ago, and I still don't know if I was the villain or the universe's chaotic assistant or just a total idiot. Probably some blend. I don't tell it out loud anymore, because people either think I'm making it up or they start looking at me like I'm not safe to be around. But I'm not dangerous. I'm just kind of dumb sometimes, in a very sincere way. So, back then, I was working overnights at this 24-hour print shop in Cleveland, the kind that does flyers for divorce lawyers and funeral homes and sometimes menus for pop-up taco trucks. I was 25, lived alone, smoked too much, and kind of floated through life in this half-lucid haze of Red Bull and ramen. My boss, Andrew, didn't give a crap about anything except making sure the machines didn't jam. One night, it's like 2:30 a.m. and this guy in a suit walks in, soaked from the rain, holding a soggy briefcase. He looks like a third-tier Bond villain after a botched heist. He's got this wild-eyed, everything's on fire energy, but he's trying to act cool. I ask if he needs help, and he says he needs 20 full-color brochures printed immediately. No files. He pulls out this laminated flyer from his bag like it's a holy relic and asks me to scan it and make it look professional. The flyer was for a couple's therapy retreat. Like something called Harmony Now, with doves and a stock photo of a couple holding hands in a canoe. I ask if it's for work or something, and he mutters, "Personal." I don't press. I scan it, clean it up, boost the saturation, slap some drop shadows on the text, and cue it to print. While the printer's warming up, he just kind of crumples into one of the lobby chairs, head in hands. He's mumbling to himself, and I catch something like, "She's gonna leave. She said she packed a bag." Now, again, I'm not a therapist. I'm a guy who once microwaved a fork on accident because I thought it was plastic. But something about this man in this moment made me feel responsible? I don't know. Like the universe had dropped him in front of me and said, "Hey dumbass, do something." So I tell him, "Hey, if it's not too weird, people don't really leave when they're still giving you flyers." He looks up at me like I just handed him a ladder out of a well. The brochure's finished printing. He asks for a folder. I give him one for free, which I technically wasn't supposed to do. He leaves without saying thank you, just nods like he's holding his breath. End of story, right? 2 days later, I'm outside the print shop during my break. It's like 4:45 a.m., and I'm chain-smoking Camel Blues while trying to play this busted Sudoku app on my phone. I look up and see this Honda Civic parked crooked as hell in the employee spot. I don't recognize it. I walk over thinking someone maybe left a note or crashed and dipped, and I realize the car's running. Lights on. Lights on. I peer inside, keys in the ignition, purse on the passenger seat, chick full. A wrapper on the floor, and a half-full Dunkin' iced coffee sweating in the cup holder. Radio's playing. Maroon 5 for some reason. No one around. No one in the shop. And I don't know what possessed me exactly, but I opened the door and got in. Not like, ha ha ha, wouldn't it be funny? I got in, put it in drive, and pulled out of the lot like I'd been driving this Civic since birth. I wasn't thinking. I wasn't angry. I wasn't doing it for money or thrill. It felt like sleepwalking. I drove full blot north, parked it in front of a Family Dollar, turned it off, and left it there. That's all. No damage, no theft. I didn't even touch the iced coffee. I just sat in it for a second, then walked back to work like nothing happened. Here's the twist. That night, a woman walks into the shop and asks for Andrew. He's not there. She looks annoyed. Early 30s, stressed, nice sweater. She asks if anyone found a purse. I say no. Then she sees the security camera mounted above the register and says, "Can I see the footage from this morning? Someone stole my car from your parking lot." I panic. I say I don't know how to work the cameras. She doesn't believe me. She says her car was taken while she ran into the yoga place 2 doors down. She was gone 5 minutes. Someone took it and left it running outside a Family Dollar. She got a call from the cops and everything. I mumble something about "so weird" and offer her a water bottle. She leaves. Doesn't come back. A week passes. Andrew never checks the tapes. And then, a few nights later, the guy from the brochure comes back in. This time he's not in a suit. He's wearing a hoodie and jeans. He looks calm. Not good, exactly. Like he just cried in a Home Depot parking lot and made peace with his mortality. He asks for 20 more brochures. Same flyer. Says they're renewing their vows in October. I print them. I say, "That's great to hear." It's great to hear. Then, as he's walking out, he turns back and says, "Hey, I never thanked you for the first time." She thought it was sweet. Said it reminded her I still wanted us to work. So, thanks. I say, "No problem, man." He leaves. I never see him again. So now I'm sitting here 7 years later, still wondering, did I steal his wife's car? Was she the one who parked it outside our shop? Was she trying to test him? Was she spying on him? Was she coming to leave him and got scared off when her Civic disappeared for 30 minutes and reappeared outside a dollar store like it had gone on a self-reflective spirit quest? Did I accidentally interrupt a divorce? Or did I save a marriage? Or was it all just unrelated chaos, and I'm the idiot who got in someone's car and drove it away for no reason like a Sims character with no autonomy. I don't know, I never found out, but sometimes I think about her coffee still sitting there in the cup holder. About how cold it probably was by the time she got it back. About whether she drank it anyway or just threw it out. I think about him standing in his living room with those brochures in his shaking hands. When a call wasn't locked, when the car was running, when everything in my life was so empty and directionless that I said, sure, why not? And hijacked someone else's Tuesday. Maybe that's what I was doing. Stealing a moment. Redirecting a story. God, I hope they're okay. Anyway, thanks for reading. I haven't told anyone that in a long time. Please don't call the police. It was a very soft crime. Let me know if I'm going to hell or if I qualify for some kind of karmic wrench in the machine award. I'm just trying to rack my head around the fact that you, the guy who once microwaved a fork, somehow became an agent of marital harmony. That's some bizarre, accidental karma right there. I can't get the image of that poor wife finding her car outside a Family Dollar with Maroon 5 playing on the radio out of my head. The universe works in the weirdest ways. Alright, let's just get into the next story. My neighbour's husband thinks I'm his dead brother, and I haven't corrected him. I've rewritten this opening 5 times now, because I don't know what the hell I'm trying to say. I guess I just need to put it out there. It's been sitting in my chest like a warm rock for months, and I feel like I'm going to choke on it if I don't. No one in my life really knows the full story. Not my girlfriend, not my co-workers, definitely not my family. It's not even something I think about constantly, but every now and then it just comes up behind me like a tap on the shoulder, and I feel like I'm in some really specific dream I don't remember falling asleep into. It started in February. I had just moved into this duplex in South St. Paul. I was renting the downstairs unit, and this older couple lived above me, Janelle and Arthur. The place was cheap because the landlord lives in Arizona and hasn't touched the property since 2003. The upstairs unit is their home, and I got the bottom half. It's not ideal. The walls are thin, and you can hear everything. But rent is rent. Janelle is one of those ladies who talks to you in the yard whether you want her to or not. Not in a bad way. She's sweet, but relentless. She always has something to say about the weather, or her knees, or the state of the tomatoes in her windowsill planters. She wears shirts with embroidered cats on them, and once gave me a gallon Ziploc full of ribbon candy like it was a normal thing to do. He's in his 70s and walks like a guy who used to be tall but has been slowly folded by time. He's got liver spots and thick glasses and dresses like he's still waiting for a Sears catalogue to call him back. Most days he sits on the porch with a book he never actually reads. The TV is always on in their place, some channel where people are yelling about gold or knives or both. He doesn't say hi, he doesn't really look at you. Until one afternoon in early March when I was carrying groceries in, and he looked at me and said, "You always come back." I thought he was talking to someone else. I even looked over my shoulder, but it was just us. I said, "Sorry," and he smiled, slow, like his face was remembering how, and said, "You always come back. That's what I like about you." I smiled back, polite and confused, and said something dumb like, "Yep, can't stay away from Hy-Vee." He just nodded and went back to staring at the street. That was it. The next time was a week later. I was hauling laundry out of my trunk and he was sitting on the steps. I nodded at him and he said, "You cut your hair." Now, I'd gotten a haircut the day before. But I hadn't told anyone, hadn't posted anything, hadn't mentioned it to Janelle. I blinked and said, "Yeah, just yesterday." And he said, "Did it yourself?" I said no, supercuts, and he nodded again, like I'd confirmed something he already knew. And that's when I started realizing something was off. Not call the cops off. Just a slow wrongness. Like when you're watching a movie and someone's wearing a modern watch in a scene set in 1800. It started happening more. He'd say things like, "Your brother used to wear that color," or "You still driving that blue Toyota?" I don't have a Toyota. I drive a black Subaru. Once, while I was locking my door, he asked if Maureen was still giving me trouble. I said I didn't know a Maureen. He looked away and said, almost to himself, she always was a lot. At first I figured it was some kind of dementia thing. Maybe he was getting names and faces mixed up. But it didn't feel like that. He wasn't confused. He was certain. I asked Janelle once if Arthur was okay, if he had memory issues or anything. She kind of sighed, like she'd been waiting for someone to bring it up, and said, he has his days, some better than others. But he's mostly there. He just talks to people who aren't always around anymore. She didn't elaborate, just went back to trimming the bushes. I should have just let it be. Chalked it up to whatever mental filing system Arthur was working with and kept living my life. But I'm nosy. And if I'm honest, I liked the attention. I liked being looked at like I belonged to something, especially in a new city with no real friends and a job that makes me feel like I'm slowly evaporating into spreadsheets. So I didn't correct him. Not when he asked if I was still playing guitar. Not when he said, your mum would have loved that laugh. Not when he handed me a key one morning and said, this used to be yours, you know. You lost it fishing, but I kept it. I took the key. It didn't fit any door I'd ever seen. I told my girlfriend about it once, kind of vaguely. Just said my upstairs neighbour gets me confused with someone. She laughed and said I should go with it, pretend I'm a secret spy or long-lost heir. But I didn't tell her that I was already pretending, that I'd started smiling in ways I thought Arthur would recognise, that I wore a green flannel twice in 1 week because he'd said, that colour suits you. I don't know what I thought would happen. Maybe I imagined some beautiful Hallmark moment where he'd have closure or say something profound, or I'd uncover some old family secret. Instead, things just kept getting stranger in small, quiet ways. One night in late April, he knocked on my door. First time he'd ever done that. I opened it and he looked a little panicked. He said, I can't find the letters. He said they were in the drawer. I didn't know what to say. I said, which letters? He blinked hard, like I'd slapped him. The ones you wrote from the base. You said you kept them, said they were safe. His hands were trembling. I told him we could look together, and we did. He led me upstairs for the first time. Their apartment was exactly what I expected. Brown carpet, yellow walls, a TV playing nothing, and the smell of old plastic. He opened a drawer in the living room side table, and it was full of TV remotes and mail. No letters. He sat down and rubbed his face. So I said, I'll try to remember where I put them. He looked at me for a long time, then nodded. You always were good at keeping things safe. When I left, Janelle was standing in the hallway. She didn't say anything, just looked tired. I didn't sleep well that night. The next morning, he didn't come outside, nor the next. I heard a loud TV and footsteps, but no Arthur on the porch. Then, after 5 days, I found an envelope stuck in my mailbox. No stamp, no name. Just a note written in tight old man handwriting. It said, you don't have to pretend, but thank you. You gave me more time. That was in May. Since then, he's barely looked at me. When I pass him on the steps, he nods, but doesn't speak. When I bring in groceries, he doesn't ask where I got them. The key is gone. I don't know if he took it back, or if it disappeared into the same place the letters went. Janelle still talks to me, still gives me candy and tells me about the birds. But now she says things like, he gets tired more these days, or he doesn't remember the tomatoes anymore. I don't know who he thought I was. Maybe a brother, maybe a son, maybe just someone who left when he didn't want them to. But I was someone, and for a while that was enough for both of us. I keep meaning to ask Janelle, to say, hey, did Arthur have a brother who played guitar and wore green flannel and went fishing and wrote letters from a base? But I never do. I don't want the answer. I don't want to find out I misread everything. Or worse, that I was playing pretend with a real ghost. I haven't told my girlfriend how deep I let it go. She thinks I'm being weird lately, more spacey, more quiet. He's right. But I don't know how to explain the feeling of being mistaken for someone and liking it. Of slipping into someone else's shape and feeling like maybe you fit there. I think about knocking on their door and asking if I can say goodbye, but I wouldn't even know who I'm saying it as. So I just sit here, in the apartment below them, listening to the TV bleed through the ceiling, and wondering if he ever really believed it. If I was good enough at pretending. I don't play guitar, but I started learning, just in case he ever asks again. And that's the whole story, I guess. Nothing dramatic, just something that happened. Or is happening, or maybe never really happened at all. I'm not sure anymore. Thanks for reading. Man, that's heavy. Like, that's a whole other level of story right there. It's not crazy or wild, it's just sad and beautiful. I get why you haven't told anyone. That feeling of being so lost that you're willing to just step into someone else's life, even for a little while, just because it makes you feel seen. The note from Arthur at the end is the part that gets me. You gave me more time. That's so much weight to put on you, but it's also a gift. You're not crazy for feeling the way you do about it. It's a lot to carry around. All right, let's just get into the next story. My brother disappeared for 3 years and came back completely normal. That's what freaks me out. I never thought I'd be the kind of person to write something like this. I've read a lot of stories on Reddit that start like that, and I usually roll my eyes, but now I get it. There's something about getting older, about watching your life move forward while one single moment from your past refuses to stop knocking. I've talked myself out of writing this a dozen times, because on paper, nothing really happened. No crime, no ghosts, no true proof of anything at all. But something still isn't right, and I need to say it somewhere. My older brother Nate disappeared when I was 19. He was 26 at the time, living in a one-bedroom apartment just outside Phoenix. He wasn't married, didn't have kids, worked in it for a dental software company. We weren't especially close, not in a bad way, but there was enough of a gap between us that our relationship had always felt more like cousins than siblings. He was the kind of older brother who'd forget my birthday, but send me a pair of noise-cancelling headphones a week later with no note. He never made a big deal out of anything. He could go 2 months without texting, then call you at 2 a.m. to ask if you still remembered the way our grandpa used to eat green beans with mustard. We didn't know he was missing until his landlord called my dad. Said Nate hadn't paid rent for 2 months and hadn't responded to any of her messages. He wasn't answering his phone, she said the mailbox was full, and that the smell from the unit was starting to make the neighbours nervous. She used those exact words. Starting to make the neighbours nervous. My dad flew out the next day. The police did a wellness check and found the apartment completely empty. No Nate. His laptop was still on the coffee table, screen off, half a glass of water on the counter. Wallet and keys on the table. His car was in the lot. No sign of a break-in, nothing stolen. It looked like he'd just gone for a walk and forgotten to come back. The police said he was probably off somewhere. Maybe he'd had a breakdown. Maybe he was taking a break from life. It happens more than you think, they told us. My parents refused to believe that. Nate wasn't the type to ghost. He had direct deposit, weekly Google Calendar reminders to pay his bills. He flossed daily. He was, in every sense, stable. One of the only people in our family who could hold a conversation without screaming or retreating. But he was gone for 3 years. No calls, no texts, no charges on his debit card. His email went untouched. No activity on social. It was like he'd never existed. I was in college at the time, and the whole thing felt like this weird, blurry side story to my own life. I'd tell people my brother was missing like I was reading off a script. I never even cried about it until the following summer, after I ran into one of his old co-workers at Walgreens, and she asked me if we'd found him yet. I just stood there, holding a bottle of shampoo, trying to remember how sentences worked. My parents got worse. My dad got obsessed with theories, started watching YouTube videos about people who vanish in national parks. My mom got quieter and quieter, like she was trying to shrink into the furniture. I stopped going home unless I had to. Everything in that house had Nate's face on it. And then one afternoon, 3 years later, he came back. Just like that. He showed up at my parents' house at noon on a Sunday, rang the doorbell like he was delivering a package. My mum called me and said, "It's Nate." I thought she meant someone had found his body. I drove 2 hours home and found him sitting on the couch drinking a Sprite. Wearing a green flannel I remembered from his old Facebook photos. Smiling. Making jokes. Hugging people like it hadn't been over 10 days since we last saw him. We were too relieved, too stunned. There was hugging, crying, food shoved at him from every direction. Everyone kept asking, "Are you okay? Are you hurt? Do you remember us?" He just kept saying yes. He remembered everything. He said he'd been away and that he wasn't ready to talk about it just yet, but he was safe and he loved us and he was glad to be home. That was enough for about 2 weeks. Then the cracks started showing. I don't mean in Nate. That's the thing. He remembered all his passwords. He remembered names of people I'd forgotten he even knew. He knew who the president was. He still liked all the same food, still hated raisins, still quoted dumb movie lines from our childhood. He went back to the gym, reapplied for his old job, and got it. Started rebuilding his life like he'd just taken a short sabbatical. There was no trauma, no confusion, no "what the hell happened to me?" Just a guy picking up where he left off. And I don't think that's normal. I kept waiting for something to break. For him to forget what year it was. For him to say something that didn't make sense. But everything he did made perfect sense. It was like watching someone do a flawless impression of my brother. An extremely convincing, deeply detailed performance that had no errors, but no soul either. That's what started getting to me. There was no weight to him, no tension, no scars. People don't disappear for 3 years and come back with no scar tissue. Even if he'd just been hiding out somewhere, living off the grid, that would do something to you. It has to. But he was blank. I asked him once, directly, what happened. We were sitting on the back porch at night. He was drinking a beer, looking up at the stars. I said, "Do you remember where you were?" He said, "Yeah." "Yeah." I waited. He didn't say anything else. So I asked, "Are you going to tell me?" He looked over and smiled, not like he was being mean or sarcastic, but like I'd asked him if he wanted to go swimming in November. He said, "Not yet." Not no, just not yet. Just in case. I had a little notebook and I'd write down things he'd tell us, places he went, people he saw. I looked for patterns. I tried catching him in a lie. I checked his phone when he was in the shower once, and all the texts were normal. No typos, no delays. Like he was answering everything with the memory of a better version of himself. My dad was just happy. He didn't care where Nate had been. He said, "Some things are better left alone." My mum was even worse. She was suddenly baking again. She kept touching Nate's hair, like if she stopped, he'd evaporate. I don't know what I expected. Maybe that someone else would notice. That someone else would say, "Hey, isn't it weird that Nate came back and he's exactly the same?" But they didn't. Eventually, I stopped trying to convince myself I was imagining things and started leaning into the possibility that maybe I was right. That maybe whoever this was, it wasn't my brother. Not exactly, or maybe it was, but something had been scraped out of him. Some essential piece that let you sit with pain or admit fear or carry a little bit of mess in your eyes. That thing was gone. I've never told anyone this, but the night before he came back, I had a dream. I was standing on a shore in the dark, watching something come out of the water. Not a person, not really. It had his face, but the rest of it was flickering, like static on a screen. It walked up to me and said, "Thank you for waiting." And then it hugged me, and its arms were ice cold. I woke up with a nosebleed and couldn't shake the feeling that something had ended. I still don't know where Nate went. I don't think I'll ever know. But he's here now. He texts me on my birthday. He sends pictures of his dog. He asks how work is going. He tells me he's proud of me. Sometimes I almost believe it's really him, but then he'll look at me a second too long, or repeat something I just said, or ask me a question like he's reading off a script, and that feeling comes rushing back, that warm rock in my chest, that knocking I can't unhear. I haven't written this down until now. I don't know what I want anyone to say. I just wanted it out of my head for a little while. That's it. That's the whole story. He came back. He's fine. I'm the one who's not. Holy crap, that is not okay. That is straight up terrifying. The fact that he came back and he is just completely fine. People do not get erased for 3 years and come back as a clean slate. Something is supposed to be broken, you know. It is like your brother came back, but all his scar tissue was removed. He's a perfect copy, and that is what makes it so unsettling. You are not going crazy. That feeling that something is missing, that is your gut telling you the truth. And that dream with the ice-cold hug, man. I am still processing that one, but let's just move on. This next story is a whole different kind of weird. I got banned from my niece's preschool for something I didn't do, and now my entire family treats me like I'm radioactive. This is going to sound like I'm the villain, but I swear I'm not. Or at least not on purpose. I've made mistakes for sure. But this isn't what it looks like. Or maybe it is. I honestly don't even know anymore. All I know is that I'm currently persona non grata at my niece's preschool. My sister barely speaks to me, and my mom keeps praying for clarity, which is what she says when she's too pissed to be passive-aggressive. Anyway, it all started with the caterpillars. My niece, June, is 4.5. She's great. I love her. She calls me Uncle Lou, which somehow stuck even though my name is Eli. Don't ask. She's always been weirdly into bugs, frogs, anything gross. Not in a creepy way, just in that fearless little kid way, where they don't know what they're supposed to be afraid of yet. A few months ago, June started preschool at this crunchy little private place in upstate New York where I live. It's run out of an old church. They have chickens. The kids do yoga and eat hummus with their fingers and learn about garden mindfulness. My sister Jen is very into it. She has a whole Pinterest board about gentle learning environments. One Friday, Jen asked if I could pick June up from preschool. She was stuck in traffic, and her husband was at some work retreat. I said sure. I'd done it once before, no problem. I show up, they hand me June, we leave. This time, I got there a little early. June was outside, playing in the dirt with 2 other kids in what looked like a large bucket of grass. I crouch down and ask her what she's doing, and she holds up this fat, ugly caterpillar and goes, "This is Patricia, she's going to die in a circle." Which, okay, not what I expected. I said, "Who's going to die?" And she pointed to the bucket, which, upon closer inspection, contained so many caterpillars. Dozens. All crawling over each other. Some were half buried in leaves. A few looked, less than alive. She explained that they were building a funeral, because that's what Ms. Ivy said happens in nature. Everything dies and turns into snacks. I didn't really know what to say to that, so I said, "Cool," and helped her wash her hands. As we're leaving, she grabs one of the bigger caterpillars and says, "I'm bringing this one home." I tell her we can't do that. She gets upset. I say I'll ask the teacher. Ms. Ivy, who is, I swear to God, exactly what you're picturing. Long skirt, 7 nose rings, hair that smells like patchouli, says, "We discourage the removal of classroom insects." Okay, fair. Makes sense. I tell June we can't take it. She melts down. I mean, full on, collapsing, sobbing. But Patricia's my best friend, levels of heartbreak. I try to calm her down. I tell her we can make a bug house at home. I offer to draw her a picture of Patricia. Nothing works. She's sobbing and snotty and dramatic, and all the other parents are now giving me the look. You know the one. That, wow, you clearly don't know how to parent. Look. So, and this is where I fucked up, I say quietly. Okay, just put it in your pocket. We'll let it go when we get to the car. She sniffles and says, "Really?" And I say, "Sure, just don't tell the teacher." Not great, I know, but I just wanted to get her out of there without causing a scene. I figured we'd let the bug go in the parking lot and that'd be the end of it. But of course it wasn't. We get to the car. She pulls the caterpillar out of her pocket and it's not moving. I don't know if she squished it or if it just had a heart attack or what, but it's extremely dead. She immediately starts screaming. I killed Patricia. And she died because I loved her too hard. And I'm like, no, she probably just fell asleep. Which, even as I said it, I knew was the dumbest possible thing to say. June is not stupid. She's 4, not a golden retriever. She starts crying harder. She's clutching the caterpillar like it's a dead hamster. I don't know what to do. Suggest we bury it at home. She says no. She wants to return Patricia to the earth from whence she came. Her words. Not mine. So I turn the car around and we drive back to the preschool. I figure we'll just drop it near the garden or something. But when we pull up, Ms. Ivy is standing outside, and the second she sees us, her face goes flat. I mean flat. Like she already knows. She walks over and says, "Did June take a caterpillar?" I say, "Yeah, but we're bringing it back." She says, "They're not supposed to leave the garden. It disrupts the habitat." June holds up the dead caterpillar and wails, "She died from pocket air." Ms. Ivy glares at me like I'd personally drowned a bee sanctuary. She says, "I need to ask you to leave." I say, "We're just trying to return her." She says, "This isn't about the insect, it's about boundaries." Now, I want to clarify that I didn't yell. I didn't argue. Not like a loud, mocking laugh. More like one of those desperate, "What the hell is happening?" little exhales. He did not like that. She took a step back, crossed her arms and said, "You are no longer permitted on the premises." This is not a healthy dynamic for our students. So now, officially, I am banned from a preschool. I tried calling my sister to explain, and she didn't pick up. Texted me back later saying, "Need space. We'll talk later." That was 6 weeks ago. She did eventually talk to me, but it was cold. She said she was reevaluating the kind of energy she wants around June. I told her I didn't mean to disrespect the teacher or the school. I told her I panicked. I said I was sorry. She said, "You made it about you. It was about control." Which, what? My mom thinks I should just write a letter to the school. "Own your actions," she says, like I keyed the principal's car or something. My dad hasn't said anything, but last time I went over, he gave me this little speech about respecting people's ways. Which is hilarious coming from a guy who once got kicked out of a Home Depot for screaming about garden hose adapters. And here's the part I haven't told anyone. I found another caterpillar the other day. Same kind. Big, ugly, fuzzy. I saw it on the sidewalk near the library and I just froze. I picked it up and held it in my hand for a long time. But because I didn't know what else to do. Anyway, I miss my niece. I miss being unkalu. I miss getting juice boxes thrown at my head and hearing stories about fire truck dreams. I think about writing her a letter, but I don't know if she'd get it. I know it was just a bug, but also it wasn't. It was this moment, this tiny, dumb moment that cracked open something way bigger. And now there's this weird silence around me that feels heavier than it should. That's it. That's the whole thing. Because of a bug funeral. And now my family thinks I'm a bad influence. Man, what a train wreck. Like, you know how a tiny thing just spirals out of control? I'm just imagining that whole scene, from the funeral bucket, to the pocket air, to the teacher standing there talking about boundaries, while a dead bug is involved. It's so unfair, your family is treating you like you're some kind of bug murderer when you were just trying to help your niece. It just sucks that a moment that stupid ended up hurting you. I get why you miss being Uncle Lou. Alright, that was a lot to take in. Let's just do the next story. My landlord kept asking me about a cat I don't have. I thought he was just old. I live alone, which is something I used to be proud of. I used to make a big deal out of it at work. "Oh yeah, I've got my own place," said with a little shrug, like I wasn't desperate for human contact the second the door closed behind me. But lately, I've started to dread going home. Not peaceful quiet, more like the kind of quiet that presses into your ears a little too much, like the apartment's holding its breath and waiting for you to notice. The building is a 3-floor brick rectangle, probably built in the 60s. I'm on the second floor, apartment 2B. Rent is dirt cheap because it's a little outside town, and the landlord, Rick, lives downstairs in 1A. Retired guy, fixes everything himself. Weirdly tall. Always smells like mothballs and hand soap. When I first moved in last year, he was overly chatty. The kind of guy who stands a little too close when he talks. He'd corner me near the mailbox and tell me the exact humidity level. Ask what I do for work, then 2 weeks later ask again like it never happened. Not in a mean way, just like the lights were on, but flickering a little. Then about 6 months ago, he asked me how the cat was doing. I thought I misheard, so I said, "What cat?" He laughed. Said, "Don't be modest, I've seen it in the window. Big orange guy, right?" I told him no, I don't have a cat. Never have. He looked confused. He said, "Guess I'm seeing things." I didn't think much of it. He was pushing 80 and kind of scattered. I figured maybe one of the neighbours had a cat that liked to crawl across balconies. Or maybe there was a stray, whatever. But he kept bringing it up. 3 weeks later, I ran into him outside and he said, "Heard your cat yowling last night. Hope he's not sick." I said, "Rick, I don't have a cat." He laughed again, but it felt thinner this time. "Okay," he said. "If you say so." Kept happening. Every couple of weeks, a new comment. Saw him in the hallway. He likes to sit on your windowsill in the afternoon. Hope you're cleaning that letterbox. I kept brushing it off. He was lonely, probably nostalgic. I thought maybe he'd had a cat once and was projecting a little. Then, about 2 months ago, I noticed the smell. It wasn't strong, just faint and sour, like wet newspaper left in the sun. It came and went. Mostly in the kitchen. I cleaned everything, the sink, the fridge, the trash can. I even pulled out the oven. Nothing. Around the same time, weird stuff started showing up outside my door. Once it was a crumpled grocery receipt, but from a store I'd had shop at. Another time it was a single sock. Not mine. Not even the right size. The weirdest was a little white dish, ceramic, chipped on the side, with 2 pieces of what looked like dry cat food in it. Sitting just to the left of my doormat. I brought it downstairs to Rick and asked if it was his. He looked at it for a long time, then said, "That's funny." "What is?" He blinked. He used to have a bowl just like that. "For Harvey." I asked if Harvey was his cat. He nodded slowly. "Yeah. Orange tabby. Big guy. Real talkative. Where is he now?" Rick looked at me like I'd asked him what colour the sky was. He died. Years ago. Then he said, "But sometimes I still hear him." I didn't sleep much that night. The next few days were quiet. No comments, no bowls, no smells. I started to think maybe I'd just gotten in my own head about it, until Tuesday. I came home late, around 11, and the lights in my kitchen were on. I always turn everything off before I leave, partly out of habit, partly because I'm broke and paranoid about my electric bill. I figured maybe I forgot. I do that sometimes. But when I stepped inside, there was something else. A bowl. The same white bowl. This time on the floor just inside the kitchen. Full of water. I stood there staring at it for I don't know how long. I didn't want to touch it. Didn't even want to move. I just kept thinking, who came into my apartment? Did Rick have a key? Did I forget to lock the door? I walked through the whole apartment. Nothing was missing. Nothing was out of place. The windows were locked. The back door was dead bolted. Just me and the bowl, and the kitchen light buzzing like it always does when it's about to burn out. I dumped the water, put the bowl in a plastic bag, left it outside my door. In the morning, it was gone. I haven't told anyone. I feel like I'm going insane just writing it down. But it keeps getting worse. A week ago, I woke up to a scratching sound, like nails on wood. It was around 2 a.m. I turned on the light and it stopped. But when I went out into the hallway, there were 3 long scratches on the inside of my door. Low, like something small had pawed at it. Rick hasn't said anything lately. He just smiles when he sees me. Not friendly, more like he knows something I don't, like he's waiting. 2 nights ago, I heard it, a meow. I was in bed, lights off, fan humming, and then, clear as day, this low, raspy meow from the kitchen. I got up, walked through the whole place. Nothing. No open windows, no animals. But when I came back to bed, my pillow had a single orange cat hair on it. I don't have an explanation. I'm not saying my apartment is haunted. I'm not saying Rick is messing with me. I'm not saying anything because I don't know anything. All I know is that everything was fine until it wasn't, until the bowl showed up. Until I started seeing little orange hairs in places they shouldn't be. Until I started dreaming about something heavy curling up on my chest at night. I don't know what this is, or what it means. But I'm starting to leave the kitchen light on now. Just in case. And I swear, just before I hit post on this, I heard a soft thump in the hallway, like something small had just jumped off the counter. Okay, that is genuinely terrifying. The stuff with Rick is weird, sure, but the bowl is the part that gets me. That is not some old guy being scatterbrained. Someone or something came into your apartment. That feeling of your space being invaded is what makes this so much more than just a ghost story. And the scratch marks on the door, the meow, the single cat hair. Man, you are not crazy. You are not imagining things. Something is going on there. Let's slide right into the next one. The guy who used to mow my lawn might be my dad, and I don't know how to ask. I'd been sitting on this for a couple months now, and honestly, it's been eating at me. I don't know if I'm being paranoid or delusional or what, but something's not adding up, and I don't know how to talk about it in real life without sounding completely off my rocker. So I guess Reddit gets it first. Congratulations. A little background, I'm 27. Grew up in a small town in Indiana. Still live here. My mom raised me alone, never knew my dad, never even saw a photo. I used to ask when I was a kid, and she'd always just say it wasn't the right time for him, like he was the McCrib or something. By the time I was old enough to press her on it, it felt awkward, and then it just became one of those things I told myself didn't matter. We were fine. I had her. I had my grandma. It was what it was. He passed away 2 years ago, unexpectedly. Heart failure. I've been living in her old house ever since. I inherited it, not that it's anything fancy. Single story, cracked foundation, ancient ductwork, but it's mine. I work nights at a packaging facility and keep to myself. I'm not super social, not really on great terms with anyone in the family I do know. I'm kind of an only child in every possible sense. About a year ago, this guy named Jim started mowing my lawn. Just started doing it. The first time it happened, I figured maybe he had the wrong address. I was asleep. Again, I work nights and woke up to the sound of a mower. Looked out the window and there's this tall, tan, older guy just cruising around my yard like he owns the place. I went outside and waved him down. He stopped, killed the engine, and said, "Oh, hey there. Sorry, didn't mean to wake you. I live a couple blocks over. Just thought your grass looked like it needed a trim. Hope you don't mind." I was confused, obviously, but he was friendly, casual, like he really didn't think this was strange. I said I could pay him, and he laughed and said, "Nah, don't worry about it. Just something to do." And then he left. I thought it was a one-off. Some bored retiree doing a good deed, whatever. But then he came back. Every 2 weeks, like clockwork, never asked, never knocked. Just showed up and mowed. Once I came outside with a bottle of water to thank him, and he just nodded like I was some co-worker he'd been on a shift with for years. He told me his name was Jim. Didn't give a last name. Said he used to do construction back in the day, and now he mostly gardens, fishes, and helps out when he can. I should have asked more questions, but something about him made that hard. He had that easy kind of confidence that makes you feel like you're the weird one for not understanding how the world works. Like, of course, he's allowed to just mow someone's lawn without being asked. At some point, it started to become normal. I'd leave cold drinks out for him sometimes. Once I offered him gas money, and he waved me off. Another time he brought me a pie. Cherry. Said his lady friend baked too many and she didn't like freezing them. He'd ask about work. Ask if I was sleeping okay. Ask if I needed anything from Home Depot like we were neighbours or something. I didn't know how to explain that I didn't have neighbours like that no one had looked after me like that in a long time. I started thinking of him as my lawn dad, as dumb as that sounds. I even told my co-worker about him, just like, yeah, some guy keeps mowing my yard. Kind of my unofficial stepdad now. He thought it was hilarious. Then things started getting weird. It started with a photo. I was going through my mum's closet. She had these giant Tupperware bins full of old photos, ticket stubs, letters, receipts. I wasn't really looking for anything in particular. Just felt like being close to her for a bit. In one of the bins was a Polaroid, kind of faded, but clear enough. It was my mom, probably in her early 20s. And standing next to her was Jim. Same jaw, same smile. Same stupid fishing hat he still wears. I stared at it for a long time, flipped it over. No writing on the back, nothing else in the bin like it. But it was him. I didn't say her name, just my mum. He looked at me for a second too long, then said, yeah, we met a long time ago. Sweet girl. Lot of spirit. That was it. Lot of spirit. Like she was a character in a ficking novel. I asked if they were close. He shrugged. We were young. Life happens. And then he started the mower again. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning there was an envelope on my porch. No name, just 4 photos. One of him and my mum sitting in what looked like a diner booth. One of them fishing. One of just her, smiling at the camera, sun in her eyes. And one of me, as a baby, being held by him. I don't remember it. I don't know where it was taken. But there's no mistaking it. He's holding me like it's the most natural thing in the world. I look maybe 6 months old. Same eyes. I haven't confronted him. I don't know why. Part of me is afraid he'll lie. Part of me is afraid he'll tell the truth. I keep playing out the conversation in my head. Are you my dad? Well, yes. But I didn't know if I should say anything. Why now? Because you looked tired. Because your grass was long. Because I missed too much already. Or maybe he'd say, I was never supposed to be a dad. Your mom made that clear. Or maybe it's worse. Maybe he left. Maybe she told him to stay away. Maybe he was married. Maybe he didn't want me. The point is, I don't know what version of him I'm supposed to believe. The quiet man with the lawnmower, or the man in the photo holding me like I'm something fragile and holy. And the weird thing is, I like him. I really like him. Not in a needy way, but in that stupid, primal, almost embarrassing way where some part of you just wants someone to pat your back and say you're doing okay. I've gotten used to him being around. The hum of the mower, the way he folds his paper towel before wiping his mouth. To the stories he tells about fish that got away. It feels like I've had something for the past year that I didn't even know I needed. And now I'm terrified of what happens if I push too hard and lose it. I don't know what to do. I don't know what's mine to ask. My mom never said a word about him. No note, no letter, nothing in the will. Just silence. If she wanted me to know, wouldn't she have told me? If he wanted me to know, why didn't he? Why now? I keep that photo of him holding me in the top drawer of my nightstand. I look at it sometimes when I can't sleep. Not because I need an answer, exactly, but because it makes me feel something. Some weird mix of grief and comfort, like being handed a blanket in the wrong season. I told my co-worker about it, not the whole thing, just that the guy mowing my lawn might have known my mum. He said, "Man, if that's your dad, that's kinda beautiful." I said, "Is it?" He shrugged. "You get a second chance. Not everyone does." Maybe he's right. Maybe this is my second chance. Or maybe it's just a story I've been telling myself to make sense of a man who didn't ask to be found. I'm not sure which would hurt more. All I know is, he's due to come mow again tomorrow. And I think I might ask. I think I might finally say, "Was it you?" And I don't know what I want him to say. But I know I need to hear it. Man, that is a whole lot to deal with. It is just so quiet and so heavy all at once. The idea that this person just showed up and started being the kind of dad you didn't know you needed, just because your lawn looked a little sad. That is a whole new level of emotional. I can't even imagine what it is like to get a cherry pie from a man and then find a photo of him holding you as a baby. It is beautiful and terrifying at the same time. You have every right to feel confused and scared. I hope you get the answer you're looking for. After a story like that, you realize how a tiny moment can change everything. Anyway, let's get into the next one. The woman who stole my parking spot every morning might be the reason I started going to therapy. I started noticing her in April, though it's possible she'd been doing it longer and I just didn't care until the heat hit. I live in a decent enough housing society in West Delhi. It's one of those towers built in the late 90s where everything is a little off-center and half the lights in the elevator flicker like it's haunted. The parking lot is unmarked, unofficial, and deeply political. Which is to say, no painted slots, just a social agreement based on seniority, middle-class aggression, and everyone's willingness to pretend there's order when there is none. I've lived here for 5 years. My job's remote, so most days I don't move the car until the evening. But starting in April, I had to go to Gurgaon twice a week for these god-awful client meetings that were somehow always scheduled for 10 a.m, which means leaving by 8:15 at the latest, or getting stuck in some Kafkaesque hell loop on the outer ring road. The first time I noticed her was a Tuesday. I came down at 8:10 and my spot, which isn't a spot, I know, but it is where I've always parked, was occupied. Silver Honda City, slightly dented bumper, weird dream catcher hanging from the rearview mirror. Thought maybe it was a guest, or someone new who didn't know the unspoken rules yet. I squeezed into the horrible corner space next to the dumpster, cursed the world, and left. But then it happened again. And again. Same car. Same spot. And always gone by the time I came back in the evening. I could have said something to the ROA president, Mr. Varma, who treats his volunteer post like he's in charge of national security. But the last time I complained, it was about someone drilling it to me. He sent me a PDF titled Guidelines for Constructive Citizenship and told me to cultivate patience. So, no. Instead, I did what every mature adult does. I started watching her. Not stalking, just observing, taking mental notes. I noticed she left every morning at exactly 7:50, wearing oversized sunglasses and carrying what looked like a large Tupperware in a cloth bag. She walked fast, always looked slightly annoyed. She had the energy of someone who was perpetually 10 minutes late and deeply aware that she was the main character of every room she entered. I hated her. And then, on a particularly hot morning in May, I snapped. I came down at 8:07 and saw her reversing into the spot like she owned it. I honked. Short, sharp, territorial. Stopped, rolled down the window. Raised an eyebrow like I was the intruder. I rolled mine down and said, "Excuse me, this is my usual parking." She said without even blinking, "But you weren't here." I stared at her. "I come down at 8:10 every Tuesday and Thursday," she shrugged. "I'm gone by 7:50. We're not clashing. I have to park somewhere. So do I." And then she parked and walked off. No apology, no negotiation. Just pure, undiluted audacity. I was so stunned, I didn't even get out of the car for a full minute. I just sat there with the aircon and the fan wheezing like a dying goat. The thing is, I know it sounds minor. A parking spot. A woman with too many bags. Not the end of the world. But it started doing something to me. Some weird, slow-burn chemical reaction. I started waking up earlier, just to beat her. I changed my whole routine. Moved meetings. Skipped breakfast. Once, I came down at 7:15, sat in the car with a flask of tea, and waited. When she showed up at 7:45 and saw me already parked, she paused for half a second, then drove off without even looking at me. I felt victorious for about 3 minutes. Then I spent the rest of the day wondering why I was acting like a cartoon villain. It got worse. I started dreaming about her car. Once, I had this half-asleep hallucination where I was trying to parallel park, and her Honda City kept multiplying like a virus. In another, we were both trying to enter the same parking spot from opposite ends, and ended up crashing in slow motion while she laughed and I cried. I googled rage parking psychology. I joined in Delhi Apartments thread and nearly posted something passive-aggressive before deleting it. I found myself rehearsing arguments with her in the shower, like I was preparing for a legal deposition. The lowest point came in June. I came down at 8 a.m. and for once the spot was empty. I felt triumphant. I parked, and as I was walking away, I saw her car turning into the society gate. Our eyes met. I expected her to ignore me like always. Instead, she rolled down the window and said, "Early today." I said nothing. "You win." "It's not a competition," she said. "Sure it is," and drove off. I stood there for a full 30 seconds after she left, holding my laptop bag like it was a briefcase full of emotional baggage. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because of the spot. Not in a romantic way. There was nothing romantic about it. More like a fixation. A fascination. Who was she? Why did she carry that bag? What was in the Tupperware? Where did she go at 7:50 a.m.? Twice a week. I started making up stories. Maybe she was a nurse. Or secretly running a lunch service for cranky uncles in golf clubs. Maybe the spot wasn't about convenience. Maybe it was about routine, control, some tiny thread keeping her day together. And if that was true, what did that say about me? I started journaling. Something I hadn't done since school. It wasn't about her exactly. More like the weird fog in my head. The way small things felt enormous. The way anger curdled into shame, then into obsession, then back into silence. I wrote one entry that just said, "I'm becoming the kind of person I used to roll my eyes at." Eventually, I made an appointment with a therapist. I didn't say it was about a parking spot. I said I'd been feeling agitated, unfocused, prone to petty grudges. Which was true. She asked me what I was holding on to. I said, stupid things. She said, start there. So I did. We talked about control, about grief, about the kind of loss that doesn't come from death, but from the slow erosion of identity. We talked about my mom's illness, my friendships or lack of them. We talked about how some people express pain through avoidance and others by fighting invisible battles over invisible parking spots. Last week the Honda City wasn't there, not at 7:45. Not when I got back at 6 p.m. It hasn't been back since. Part of me is relieved. Part of me misses the ritual. I've gone back to waking up later. The spot's always empty now. It feels less like a victory and more like the aftermath of a storm you forgot why you were bracing for. I never learned her name. Sometimes I think about leaving a note on the windshield just in case she comes back. Not to apologize, not even to explain. Just to say, I hope you're okay. The spot's free. Maybe that's the best I can do. Maybe it's not about the spot at all. That is a really powerful story. It just goes to show you how sometimes the smallest, dumbest thing becomes the key that unlocks all the other stuff you didn't know you were carrying around. Like the whole time you thought you were fighting a woman over a parking spot. You were really just fighting yourself. And the woman was just a person trying to park her car. The fact that you got all the way to therapy over it is both hilarious and genuinely moving. I hope you are doing okay now that the spot is free. Alright, that's enough of that. Let's get right into the next story. I moved into my ex-girlfriend's apartment without knowing. It used to be hers. I think her mum did it on purpose. I've always had bad luck with leases. I don't know what it is. Timing, credit score, bad vibe. But every apartment I've had since college has come with some weird clause or broken oven or nightmare neighbour. So when I landed a cheap one-bedroom in a nice neighbourhood this summer, with working appliances, sunlight, and rent under $1,000, I thought maybe things were finally shifting in my favour. I should have known that was the curse. The apartment was part of a small 2-story complex, 4 units total, in a weird part of town that's like half yoga moms, half ancient repair shops that are definitely money laundering fronts. Quiet. Creepy at night. but charming in the daytime, like someone tried to build a life-sized dollhouse street and then gave up halfway. I found it through Facebook Marketplace, of all places. An older woman named Sandra was listed as the contact. She said it was her daughter's old place, but the daughter had moved very far away and the place had been sitting empty for a while. The ad didn't have many photos, but the price and location were good enough that I didn't care. Sandra met me there with a jangly ring of keys and a manila folder full of badly photocopied documents. She seemed a little nervous, or maybe just overwhelmed, like she'd never done this before. She was a musician, Sandra said, smiling as she pushed open the door. You'd never know it now. She stripped it pretty clean, but she used to write songs right there in the corner. I remember thinking, cool, probably a piano or something. There was a square patch on the floor that looked cleaner than the rest, the shape of a keyboard stand. I signed the lease that day. Here's the part I didn't tell you. My ex-girlfriend is named Harper. We broke up 3 years ago. She was, in fact, a musician. And this was her apartment. I didn't realize it at first. Not until the 3rd or 4th week living there, when I found a small ceramic turtle wedged behind the radiator. It sounds stupid, I know. But the turtle wasn't just a trinket. It was hers. I gave it to her. I bought it for $1 from a roadside gas station in upstate New York during a snowstorm when our train was delayed and we sat in the parking lot eating peanut butter cups and arguing about whether we'd survive a zombie apocalypse if it started right then. She had named it Walt Turtle. It was a dumb, perfect joke between us. A Pokemon reference and a wordplay that made her laugh so hard she snorted. I hadn't seen it since we broke up. But there it was, behind the radiator, with one chipped flipper and a bit of dust on its head. I picked it up and stared at it for a full minute, like it might come alive and explain everything. I sat on the floor. I felt cold and sweaty at the same time. And then it clicked. The light green walls. The hook in the ceiling where she used to hang her weird papier-mâché mobile. The chipped tile in the bathroom where she once dropped a curling iron and screamed like she'd broken the earth. This was her place. And I hadn't recognized it because the walls were mostly bare now, and she had moved out over a year before. But still, it was hers. The corner still echoed. I texted her. I know I shouldn't have, but I did. Hey, this is going to sound insane, but did you used to live at address? She replied 2 hours later. Yes. Wait. Why? I sent a photo of the turtle. She didn't reply for a long time. Then she just wrote, Wow. I didn't know what to say. I tried to make a joke about cosmic coincidences, but it landed weird. The next morning, I got a call. It was her mum, Sandra. She said, I want to apologize. I shouldn't have rented it to you. I don't know. I thought maybe it would help. I said, help who? She said, both of you. That's when it hit me. She knew exactly who I was. From the beginning, she knew my full name. She had definitely seen photos of us together. The Facebook messages, the casual friendliness, the price, it all made sense. She hadn't just listed the place, she had offered it to me. It wasn't a trap. It wasn't malicious, but it was manipulative in the way only mothers can be when they want their daughter to heal and they don't care how they get there. I didn't talk to Harper again for a while after that. I told her I'd move out. She said I didn't have to. She said, it's weird, but maybe it's a good kind of weird, like closure or something. But it wasn't. The place started getting in my head. I found more things. A thumbtack in the closet door, right where she hung her beaded necklaces. A half-scraped sticker on the back of the bathroom mirror that used to say, I am enough. A tiny red guitar pick under the sink. It felt like I was living inside a ghost. Not in the spooky sense. In the emotional one. The kind of dreams that make you wake up feeling like you swallowed a balloon. Nothing dramatic, just us brushing our teeth together, folding laundry. Lying on the floor listening to music and laughing at nothing. I started playing the piano again. She used to beg me to do that more often. Said it made me less cynical. Said it reminded her why she loved me. I stopped after we broke up. But now, with that clean rectangle of space where hers used to sit, I bought my own keyboard. I put it in the exact same place. One afternoon, 3 months in, I was walking back from the post office when I saw her standing outside the building. She wasn't knocking, just standing, looking up at the window. The one that used to be hers. I stopped. She saw me. We didn't wave. I asked if she wanted to come up. She said yes. We didn't talk much. She looked around, touched the wall, sat on the edge of the bed. She laughed when she saw wall turtles sitting on the shelf. I forgot he even existed, she said. I told her he'd been holding it down. She said, the place looks smaller than I remember. I said, I think that's just what time does. We didn't hook up. We didn't cry. We didn't even hug. She left after 15 minutes. She said, take care of him, pointing to the turtle. I said I would. I don't know what to make of any of this. I renewed the lease last week. I don't think I'll stay another year, but for now, it feels like I'm slowly closing a loop I didn't know was open. Sometimes I still find things. A song lyric penciled faintly inside a cabinet. A single sequin wedged between the floorboards. A vague memory of how it used to feel to wake up here with her. I'm not haunted, but I'm not alone either. Maybe that's enough for now. That is a wild story. The kind that makes you think maybe the universe actually has a sense of humour, or a therapist, or both. The fact that her mum did it on purpose, that is just next level. It's not malicious. It's just so insane and weirdly tender in a way only a mother could pull off. You were living in a ghost story, but the ghost was emotional, not spooky. The little turtle, the faint pencil lines, the song memories. It's like you got a second chance to say goodbye to a past you never actually got to grieve. That is a lot. Anyway, that is enough of that. Let's get right into the next story. I thought my roommate was stealing my forks. The truth was so much worse. I moved into this apartment in May. It's a 2-bedroom in a split-level duplex in Portland. Not fancy, not rundown, just aggressively neutral. The landlord's one of those texts and emojis and doesn't fix anything, guys. But the rent's manageable and there's a washer-dryer in unit, which at this point in my life feels like wealth. I found the place through Craigslist. My roommate's name is David. We met once, briefly, at a coffee shop before I moved in. He seemed normal. Not warm exactly, but polite. Buttoned up in a way I assumed meant stable. He worked in it, I think. Something to do with server maintenance. He was clean-shaven, wore a zip-up jacket even though it was 72 degrees out, and called the barista Mom, which made her laugh. I didn't get serial killer vibes. I didn't really get any vibes, which honestly felt like a plus. For the first 2 months, everything was fine. We kept to ourselves. He was quiet, always in his room, never brought people over. The only unusual thing was his schedule. He worked from home but kept really weird hours, like I'd hear him clacking away on his keyboard at 2 or 3 in the morning, muttering under his breath, but whatever. I've lived with way worse. Anyway, this all started with the forks. I own a basic cutlery set, the kind you get in a plastic tray from Target. The bore of everything. I've had it for years. When I moved in, I put it in the top drawer to the left of the sink. We didn't really talk about shared kitchen space, but he had his own stuff in a drawer below, so I assumed we were doing the split everything model. About a month in, I realised I only had 3 forks. I figured one was in the dishwasher, maybe still dirty in the sink. But, a few days later, I checked again, and there were still only 3. Then 2. I thought maybe I was losing my mind, or maybe he'd used one and left it in his room. I didn't want to accuse him of anything, so I bought 2 more forks from Goodwill and didn't say a word. A week later, I had 3 again, then 2. It's going to sound dumb, but it started to feel personal. Not just inconvenient, like someone was choosing to remove forks from my life, like it was a message. I didn't confront him, we weren't on that kind of level, but I did start keeping the remaining forks in my room. Yes. I hid my forks. I'd bring one out when I needed it, wash it, dry it, bring it back, like some raccoon hoarding shiny metal. It was stupid. I felt stupid. But I just didn't want to have the conversation. Around this time, I noticed other small things. An empty cereal box placed back on the shelf. The hot water in the shower running out faster than usual. A weird chemical smell near the utility closet that came and went. Never anything big enough to mention, but it built up, like background noise I couldn't ignore. Then, one night, I had to use the bathroom around 3 a.m. David's door was open, which was weird because he usually kept it closed. His light was off. But from inside, I could hear this faint clicking sound. I slowed down, walked past, and, I swear to God, it sounded like he was whispering to something. Not on the phone, just whispering. I didn't stop to listen. I peed, went back to bed, stared at the ceiling for a long time. The next morning, his door was closed again. No sign of anything unusual. He was in the kitchen, making toast, like he hadn't spent the night talking to the void. I said good morning, he said it back. Same neutral tone as always. That night, I checked my fork drawer. One fork. At this point, I couldn't ignore it anymore. I waited until Saturday morning, when I knew he'd be up, and casually asked if he'd seen any of my forks. Tried to keep it light. Half joking. He blinked. Your forks? Yeah, I only had 4. Now I'm down to 1. He looked genuinely puzzled. I haven't touched your stuff. A pause. I have my own, he added, which was true. I'd seen his drawer. He had mismatched utensils, mostly plastic-handled crap, but still, a full set. I nodded and backed off. But I didn't believe him. That night, I went through the kitchen, top to bottom. Every drawer, every cupboard, even behind the fridge, nothing. Then, on a truly insane hunch, I checked the garbage. There, near the bottom of the bag, wrapped in a paper towel like a bloody crime scene, was one of my forks. Bent in half. It was unmistakably mine, the same faint scratch on the handle. I fished it out. I wanted to wake him up. I wanted to ask him what the hell was going on. But I didn't. I just threw the rest of the bag away, washed my hands for 5 straight minutes, and went back to bed. The next morning, David was gone. That wasn't unusual. Sometimes he left early to go work at a data center, or so he'd told me. But I used the opportunity to do something I'd never done before. I checked his room. I know. Privacy. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was seriously off. And if he was stealing and destroying my forks, I wanted to know why. His door wasn't locked. Inside, the room was neat. Bed made. Desk clear. Closet closed. The only odd thing was a series of boxes stacked in the corner. Identical plastic bins with labels like Q2, Backup, and Projects, NAS. I opened the first one, not server equipment, utensils. Dozens of them, all forks, all slightly damaged. Some bent, some with the tines warped. A few with the handles filed down or partially melted. I opened another box. More forks. Box after box. Forks, hundreds maybe, all clearly used. Some with bits of dried food still clinging to them. I stood there, frozen, my skin buzzing. I slammed the lid closed, crept out of the room, and locked myself in the bathroom. I could hear him walking around, opening the fridge, typing something on his laptop. I sat on the toilet lid and stared at the wall. Eventually, I left the bathroom and acted like nothing happened. But from that point on, I started making plans to leave. I didn't confront him. I didn't mention the boxes. I just started looking for a new place, quietly. And in the meantime, kept all my utensils in a zippered pouch in my room. I stopped cooking entirely. I couldn't trust anything in the kitchen anymore. Then, one night, about a week before I was supposed to move, I came home late. David wasn't there. The apartment was dark. I went into my room, dropped my bag, and noticed something strange. The pouch of utensils was gone. I panicked. Tore the room apart. Nothing. I opened the closet. There, inside, were 3 of my forks, melted, arranged in a triangle, with a single handwritten note taped to the wall. It said, "It's better when they don't resist." That was it. I left that night. Called a friend, slept on his couch, never went back. Hired movers to get the rest of my stuff. Didn't even tell David I was leaving. Just sent a text saying, "Found a better spot, thanks for everything." Never replied. Sometimes I wonder what his deal was. Some kind of compulsion? A fork fetish? Maybe he was running some kind of weird art project, or had convinced himself the forks were dangerous. I don't know. I don't want to know. All I know is, every time I eat with metal utensils now, I check them first. Just in case. That is genuinely one of the most unsettling stories I have heard. It starts so mundane, a missing fork, which is almost funny, but then it just gets so dark so fast. It is a slow, methodical kind of creepy that feels so much more personal than a loud fight. And those boxes, man. The melted forks and the note. That is some straight-up horror movie stuff. You were right to get out of there. That's a story that sticks with you. Let's see what the next one has in store. I got banned from my HOA Zoom meetings for defending the goose that lives on my roof. I live in a condo development that thinks it's a gated community. We don't have a gate. That's important context. There's literally nothing stopping anyone from walking in off the street and helping themselves to the community pool or doing karate on the fake grass near the leasing office. Which happens regularly. And yet, somehow, our HOA board behaves like we're living in a spy thriller, and every shrub violation is a direct attack on national security. Now, I wouldn't normally care. I keep my head down. Nod politely to the neighbours who pretend they don't hear each other's arguments through the walls. But this whole thing kicked off because of a goose. Let me back up. In April, a Canada goose landed on the roof above my unit and just stayed there. I don't know why. I assume he had some kind of traumatic migration incident, or got ghosted by his flock and said, "Screw it, this is my home now." And honestly, I respected that. At first I figured he'd move on, like most wildlife does when it realizes we've concreted over every square inch of its ancestral habitat. But no. This guy made it personal. He set up camp on the roof like a sentry. I named him Gerald. Gerald became a bit of a fixture. He'd waddle back and forth across the roof, honk at people walking their dogs, and shit in one very specific spot next to the drain pipe, like he was paying rent. I started leaving out cracked corn for him, which I googled and is apparently the goose equivalent of junk food, but whatever, we all have our vices. Then, about 2 weeks in, Gerald got loud. Not all the time. Just when anyone got within a 10-foot radius of my unit. Couple arguing about paint swatches in front of 2B. Honk. Me, coming home with takeout. Honk, 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 honk like a goddamn clown car. And here's the thing, I got used to it. It was like living with a very irritable roommate. I'd nod at him in the mornings. He'd honk softly. A truce. But the HOA did not feel the same way. They sent a notice. Wildlife interactions in common areas are discouraged. Please refrain from feeding animals or encouraging nesting behavior. This one was bolder. Red font. Geese are aggressive and pose health hazards. Residents will be fined if found facilitating habitation. Still ignored it. Third notice. They CC'd legal. Talked about liability and exposure to avian waste. Meanwhile, Gerald was thriving. He found a mate, I started calling her Janice, and suddenly there were 2 geese on the roof. Nesting. In love. Building their weird little stick palace above my living room. I was honoured. Then came the Zoom meeting. I didn't even know our HOA board met via Zoom until I got the invite. It was passive-aggressively titled Discussion of Wildlife Nuisance Situation. 4C. That's me. I'm 4C. I tuned in out of morbid curiosity and because I had nothing better to do after 3 mimosas. The meeting was already a circus by the time I joined. 17 windows of mostly boomers yelling over each other. One guy, Ron I think, kept calling Gerald the terrorist bird. Someone else claimed their child had developed a fear of feathers. It was surreal. I stayed muted for the first 20 minutes. just watched as they argued about goose poop like it was a geopolitical crisis. Finally, someone asked if the offending unit occupant was on the call. That's how they phrased it. So I unmuted and said calmly, "His name is Gerald." Silence. I explained that Gerald had been peacefully living on my roof for over a month, that I'd formed a respectful relationship with him, and that he had a right to exist just as much as we did. I might have compared him to the Lorax. I might have quoted Finding Nemo. At one point, Ron yelled, "This isn't a sanctuary, it's a condo association," and I responded with, "Tell that to the squirrels, Ronald." That got me muted. Then someone asked if I'd been feeding the geese. I panicked, then lied. Said no. They asked if I'd placed bedding materials on the roof. I didn't even know what that meant, but I said no again. That was also a lie. I had tossed up an old towel during a storm so they'd have something dry to sit on. In hindsight, not my smartest move. Then, and I swear this is true, they brought on a goose removal consultant. A woman named Trish. She had a PowerPoint. She wore a khaki vest and spoke in hushed tones like she was narrating a nature documentary. Her presentation included phrases like humane deterring techniques and territorial disorientation. At one point she mentioned liquid repellents derived from grape extract, and I said, "You mean wine?" Trish would humanely relocate the geese within the week. I asked where they'd go. No one answered. That night, I stayed up watching Gerald and Janice sleep on the roof like fluffy sentinels. I felt like I'd failed them, like I'd invited guests to a party and let the cops shut it down. So I made a decision. I wrote a letter, a full-page, printed, signed letter that I slipped under every door in the complex. It started, "My name is Jamie. I live in 4C. You may have heard some things about the geese on my roof." It ended, "I don't believe we have to evict every living thing that doesn't pay an HOA fee." That was Tuesday. By Thursday, Gerald and Janice were gone. No warning, no noise, just gone. Not like sobbing, but a solid, embarrassing single-man tear as I ate cereal and stared at the empty roof. Then, Friday morning, I found the towel. It was folded, neatly, sitting on my welcome mat. No note. I still don't know if that was Trish being passive-aggressive or someone else in the building trying to make peace. But here's the real kicker. The board sent a follow-up. Zoom invite the next week. I tried to join. I got an error. Meeting id no longer valid. Turns out they made a new board listserv. I wasn't on it. I was quietly banned from future HOA Zoom calls, which, honestly, fair, but here's where it gets weird. 2 weeks later, Gerald came back. Alone. Just for a day. He sat on the roof for 6 hours, didn't honk, didn't move much, just sat. Like he was checking in. I sat out on my balcony with a beer and nodded at him. We didn't need words. And then he left. I haven't seen him since. But every time I walk past Ron's unit, I think about taping a goose feather to his door, just to remind him. They never forget. That is an incredible story. The fact that an entire HOA and a goose removal consultant with a PowerPoint got involved is just pure chaos. It is absurd but also beautiful. You are fighting a righteous war, and the fact that you went to all that trouble for Gerald is honestly pretty amazing. The return of Gerald and the neatly folded towel, man, you are a hero. That's a story that sticks with you. Let's see what the next one has in store. I accidentally started a war between 2 local birdwatching clubs, and now I think I'm banned from 3 public parks. Let me start there. I don't know the difference between a crow and a raven. I've never used binoculars correctly. I only learned the word plumage because it came up in a crossword. But somehow, over the last 5 months, I've become the central figure in a deeply stupid, surprisingly vicious rivalry between 2 birdwatching groups in my area, and possibly a third, though that one might just be a retired guy with a YouTube channel and too much time. None of this was intentional. It started with me trying to impress a woman named Emily. Emily was, or maybe still is, really into birds. She talked about them like other people talk about religion or conspiracy theories. We met on Hinge, went for coffee, and about halfway through the date she pointed at a bush and said, "Oh my God, a cedar waxwing," and bolted off mid-sentence to get a better look. She was like that. I thought it was kind of endearing. She told me she helped run a Facebook group called Feathered Friends of Foxgrove. She invited me to join. I didn't think anything of it. I joined. I posted a photo a few days later of what I thought was a cardinal. It was not a cardinal. Within minutes, 3 people corrected me in increasingly condescending tones. "That's a scarlet tanager, but good try. This is basic fieldy-dowdy, dude. Maybe don't post until you've done a little research." Emily didn't say anything. That should have been my cue to leave the group and let the birds fly freely without my interference. But I don't know. Something about the smugness set me off. So I posted again the next day. A blurry photo of a pigeon on a garbage can. Caption: "Rare urban falcon spotted on 5th and Main." I thought it was obvious I was joking. It wasn't. Half the group flipped out. Some thought I was mocking birdwatchers. I was, kind of. Others accused me of knowingly spreading misinformation. One guy, Mark, I think, DM'd me a 500-word rant about respecting the sanctity of shared spaces. I left the group. But then, 2 days later, I got added to a different group. This one was called True Beaks of Foxgrove. Their cover photo was the same as the first group's, but inverted, literally the same image flipped upside down. I got a message from a woman named Jules. "Glad you're out of that cult. We think you're funny. Want to help us mess with them?" Turns out Foxgrove, my dumb little town in upstate New York, has not 1, not 2, but 3 separate birdwatching communities, all of which absolutely despise each other. There's Feathered Friends, which is serious, old school, and extremely hierarchical. Then there's True Beaks, which formed as a breakaway group after a disputed vote about whether or not to allow walkie-talkies on group outings. Then there's Birdvids, which is just one guy, Gary, who has a drone and once made a viral video of a heron pooping mid-flight. He thinks everyone else is lame. I didn't mean to take sides, but I started making memes, mostly dumb stuff, photos of pigeons labelled as stealth hawks, grainy pictures of ducks with captions like "confirmed UFO landing site." The more ridiculous, the better. True Beaks loved it. They started asking me to post more. One guy even sent me a list of trigger birds that would guarantee a response from certain Feathered Friends members. Apparently, there's a whole drama history surrounding whether nuthatches are overrated or delightfully cheeky. I didn't know what any of that meant. But I leaned in. Then someone, I still don't know who, printed one of my memes and taped it to the community board at Foxgrove Park. It was a photo of a rotund goose with the words, "When the serious birders say no, but you pay taxes too." Apparently, this was a direct shot at Diane, one of the Feathered Friends admins, who had kicked someone out of a nature walk the week before for bringing a Bluetooth speaker that played bird calls. Diane believes artificial calls are cheating. The backlash was immediate. Diane threatened to sue. Jules posted a 19-minute video titled "The Weaponization of the Wren." Gary, the drone guy, offered to livestream a neutral birding peace summit. It got 17 views. Then, last month, things got physical. There was a city-sponsored birdwatching event at Maple Hollow, the kind of public event where someone in a vest hands you a laminated checklist and tells you to be quiet. I didn't even plan on going, but Jules texted me, "You have to come. Diane's gonna be there. Bring the goose sign." I showed up late, thinking I'd stay for 5 minutes, wave the sign around, and bounce. But when I got there, it was chaos. Someone had defaced the Feathered Friends table with googly eyes. True Beaks had printed t-shirts. Jules was live, tweeting the whole thing. A guy in camo kept yelling, "Birding is for everyone," while someone else blew a duck call aggressively at children. Police showed up. I'm not making that up. Real, actual police. No one got arrested, but there were incident reports filed, and someone apparently slicked in goose poop and tried to claim it was sabotage. The city pulled funding from the event series. Emily texted me later that night, "What the hell did you do?" I didn't have a good answer. Now I get weird looks at the park. There are no meme flyers, signs near the trailhead which I'm pretty sure were put up just for me. Not technically banned, but 3 rangers have separately asked me to just keep things mellow. I haven't posted in weeks, but the groups are still at war. Last I heard, Feathered Friends tried to trademark the term Foxgrove Audubon, and Truebeaks filed a counterclaim saying they'd coined it first. Gary released a remix video of a chickadee doing nothing, with captions like, "Witness the drama." It got 1.3 million views. I'm just a guy who posted a dumb pigeon joke, and now I'm apparently the flashpoint in an ongoing civil war among birders. No moral to the story. Just don't date people who are really into birds, I guess. And if you do, don't name the goose. Crap, that story is genuinely amazing. It is so wild how a joke about a pigeon can start a full-on civil war between birdwatchers. The whole thing from the Feathered Friends group to the Truebeaks to the guy with the drone is just so incredibly petty and absurd. It's also hilarious that you ended up as the reluctant leader in a war over things like walkie-talkies and nuthatches. I can't even imagine being at a birdwatching event and seeing people with googly eyes on a table and someone yelling about how birding is for everyone. That is next-level drama. And the part about losing Emily over it? Man, it started out as a way to impress her and ended up with you being a legend in a world you don't even care about. It's both hilarious and also kind of sad that it got that crazy. You are not a birder, but you are a legend in that world, whether you like it or not. Anyway, that is enough of that. Let's get right into the next story. I think my neighbour's Wi-Fi has been changing my dreams, and I haven't figured out how to bring it up without sounding insane. Okay, so I wasn't going to post this because it's not really a question or a confession or a story with a punchline or moral. But I figured if there's anywhere on the internet I can dump a brain glitch like this without getting automatically divorced by society, it's here. Also, if anyone reading this works in telecommunications or neuroscience or sleep medicine, or just generally knows how routers work, please feel free to chime in. I don't know what this is, I just know it's real. Or realish. So I moved into this new apartment complex back in May. It's one of those buildings that used to be an office in the 80s. Flat carpet, long anonymous hallways, vaguely yellow lighting, everything smells like a bank lobby. But they slapped lofts on the sign and doubled the rent. Whatever. It's quiet. It's clean. The laundry machines don't have spiders in them. That's all I ask for, anyway. My bedroom window faces the brick wall of the adjacent unit. There's about 4 feet of space between us, just enough for trash to blow through, but not enough for sun. At night, there's a faint blue glow from the neighbour's window. Constant. Doesn't flicker. It used to bug me, but now I just pretend it's moonlight. That's not the point. The point is the Wi-Fi. So I named my Wi-Fi Pretty Fly for a Wi-Fi, like every other basic bitch on Earth. My neighbour's is called Akali's CryPT V2, which I know because it's the only other strong signal I get, and for a while I thought it was a printer. But no. It's a password-protected network that never blinks, never dips below full bars. And here's where it gets weird. It plays audio. Not on purpose, not like a speaker. I don't know how to explain it. It started about 6 weeks ago. I had a dream that I was in a hallway, very similar to the one in my building, but longer. The lights were humming, that office light kind of hum. And there was a woman with no face following me. Not threateningly, just kind of matching my pace. That's not that strange. Dreams are weird. But then I had the same dream the next night, and the next. Exact same hallway. Same hum. Same faceless woman. And then the 4th night, she whispered something. I didn't remember it when I woke up, but I had a taste in my mouth, like electricity and mint. I know that sounds fake, but I swear. I woke up tasting static. Here's where it gets worse. When I opened my laptop, it auto-connected to a network that wasn't mine. Achilles Crypt version 2. I checked my settings. Mine was still saved, but this one had priority somehow. I changed it back. Didn't think much of it. Maybe I clicked the wrong thing half asleep. That night, the dream changed. Same hallway. But now there were whispers. Low, overlapping voices. Like someone detuning a radio between confessionals. I woke up and my ears were ringing. I checked the Wi-Fi. Still connected to mine. But when I looked at the list of available networks, Achilles Crypt TV2 had disappeared. Gone. I don't know why, but I checked again at 3:17 a.m. Back again. Full bars. I downloaded a Wi-Fi analyzer app and tried to see where the signal strength was strongest. It peaked near the wall. The wall between me and the Blue Glow apartment. Fine. Back. He opened the door at exactly 3:33 a.m. Not 3:32. Not 3:34. The guy's probably mid-40s. Pale. Looks like he eats those meal replacement pouches. Smelled like printer ink. His apartment was empty. No furniture. Just cables. A card table. A monitor with no visible computer. And, I swear this is true, 4 metronomes ticking out of sync. He looked at me like I'd just said the word ice cream in a courtroom. I asked if he had a router near the wall. He said, no. Why? I said. My Wi-Fi keeps connecting to something called Achilles Crypt. He looked behind me like someone was watching. Then he said, it shouldn't be broadcasting. And closed the door. Didn't slam. Didn't lock. Just quietly ticked it shut like a movie scene. I went back to my place and stared at the wall for 20 minutes. I didn't sleep. I unplugged my router, turned off Bluetooth, shut down everything that had a chip in it. The signal was still there. Achilles Crypt version 2. I tried to forget about it. I started going to sleep with a podcast on. Something stupid and loud. Guy talking about movies for 3 hours. It helped. I had normal dreams again. For 3 nights. Then the voice came back. This time it was my voice. Reading from a list I don't remember writing. I only remember one sentence. He moves through data the way heat moves through water. I wrote that down. Next morning, the Wi-Fi was gone again. I knocked on his door. No answer. Slid a note under. Can we talk about your Wi-Fi? Lipped the note back. I don't have Wi-Fi. That was 2 weeks ago. Since then, I've stopped dreaming. Like, altogether, I go to bed. Nothing. 8 hours. No images. No sounds. No memory of sleep. It feels like being turned off. Same melody. Low. Circular. Like elevator music in a haunted building. I recorded myself one night. Slept with my phone under the pillow. Voice memo app running. Next morning, I checked. 7 hours of silence. Then, at 5:12 a.m., the sound. Snoring. Talking. Just the Wi-Fi name. Whispered once. Achilles Crypt. And then a click. Like a metronome stopping. I moved out last weekend. New place has weak Wi-Fi. Great sleep. No dreams. But last night, I plugged in my old printer and it auto-connected to something. Guess what it was called? That is genuinely one of the most unsettling stories I've heard in a long time. It starts so mundane, with a weird neighbor and a strange Wi-Fi name. But then it just gets so dark so fast. The whole thing is a slow, methodical kind of creepy that feels so much more personal than a loud fight. The whispers in your dreams, the metronomes, the note with your own voice reading from a list. Man. And the fact that it followed you. That is some straight-up horror movie stuff. You were right to get out of there. That's a story that sticks with you. What the next one has in store. I tried to help my landlord with an easy side hustle and ended up running an illegal frozen meat empire out of my garage. I don't even know how to start this without sounding insane, but I swear I wasn't trying to do anything sketchy. I just have a tendency to say yes too fast. I grew up being told that helping people bleeds character or something, and that you shouldn't say no to neighbors, especially ones who own the property you live in. That philosophy has not aged well. I rent the top floor of a duplex. It's nothing fancy. Decent kitchen, weirdly slanted bathroom, and a garage that I share with my landlord, Doug. Doug is in his late 60s, possibly early 70s, but one of those guys who has the energy of a golden retriever. Always wearing zip-off hiking pants. Always has a Bluetooth earpiece in, even if it's not connected to anything. I don't dislike him. He's just one of those people who tells you the exact same story every time he sees you. Anyway, about 5 months ago, Doug came upstairs while I was on the porch drinking coffee and said, "Hey buddy, you looking to make a little side cash?" Now, usually this means something like watching his dog or helping him carry a table. Doug's constantly buying mismatched furniture off Craigslist and putting it in his basement. But this time he was being vague. He kept saying it was an easy gig and basically just babysitting a couple of boxes now and then. I said, "Sure, what's the deal?" Doug explained that a friend of his from Florida was starting a food distribution company, specifically meat, mostly frozen, some vacuum sealed. Specialty stuff: oxtail, duck breasts, pork cheeks, bison ribs. He said the profit margins were incredible and all they needed was a regional anchor point for shipments until they scaled up to warehouse storage. His friend was going to ship the meat to Doug's address, and Doug just needed someone to receive it when he wasn't home, sign for it, and throw it into a big chest freezer he'd already cleared out in the garage. That's it. Sign and store. It sounded harmless enough. I wasn't touching the money. I wasn't handling orders. I was literally just taking boxes off a truck and dropping them in a freezer. I asked Doug if it was all legit, licensed, inspected, all that, and he waved his hand like I'd just asked if water was wet. Of course. It's meat, not meth. So I agreed. I didn't even ask what I'd be paid. I figured he'd throw me some cash now and then, or take some money off rent. I wasn't desperate, just bored. The first shipment came on a Wednesday. Big white box truck. Low company logo. 2 guys hopped out, wheeled out 3 huge boxes, and asked me to sign a form that just had the words Doug Meats scribbled in the top right corner. That should have been a red flag, I know. I signed anyway. The boxes weren't labelled beyond a little sticker that said frozen goods. Keep at 10s. I lugged them into the garage, dropped them in the freezer, and went about my day. Easy. Over the next 2 weeks, the shipments increased. 3 boxes became 5, then 7. Then one day they showed up with 12. The drivers started asking me weird questions like, "You got another unit, or just the one freezer?" And, "You the guy running the Portland route now?" I laughed like they were making jokes I didn't understand. The freezer filled up. Doug brought in a second one. I asked, "Are we scaling up or something?" He grinned like a kid at Christmas. "We're in phase 2. I still had no idea what that meant. Then one day, I opened a box out of curiosity. I'm not a health inspector, but I'm pretty sure raw meat isn't supposed to smell like low tide at a swamp. The packaging looked homemade, vacuum sealed but messy. One of the bags had a weird green tint. Another had a handwritten label that said short ribs with a question mark, like someone had guessed what it was. I called Doug. He said, "Don't worry about the labels. Sometimes the boys get a little casual on packing day." I said, "Is this stuff safe to eat?" He paused for a little too long. "Well, I wouldn't eat it raw." The next week, things got truly strange. I got a knock at my door at 7 a.m. A woman I didn't recognize, wearing scrubs, asked if I had the Korean short ribs. I told her she had the wrong house. She said, "Doug said you'd be here if you handed me $60 in cash." I told her I didn't know what she was talking about. She got flustered and left. I called Doug. He laughed. "Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you we're doing local drop-off for now, but sometimes people come pick up their orders." I said, "You're selling meat out of our garage?" He said, "Not selling, distributing." I told him that was illegal. He said, "Only if you call it a business." I asked what that meant. He said, "People sell stuff all the time out of their house. You ever bought weed off a guy with a couch in his kitchen?" That wasn't reassuring. I told him I didn't want to be involved anymore. He said no problem. He'd keep the keys. I wouldn't have to touch anything. He'd let me know if someone needed to pick up. I said fine, but I didn't want any part of it. He said he understood. The pickups increased. People started knocking at all hours. Some were polite. Others were weirdly intense. One guy showed up in a Tesla and asked for the ostrich steaks. I told him I didn't have anything, and he said, "Doug said you'd know." When I said I didn't, he said, "Tell him the Alberta guy's pissed," and drove off. I told Doug to stop giving people my name. He said, "You're just the point of contact. They trust you now." I said, "No, stop, I'm out." He said, "Okay." That night, the garage freezer lost power. I don't know how long it had been off, but when I went down to check, it smelled like a dead zoo. I opened the lid and immediately threw up in my mouth. Everything was slimy. One of the packages had exploded. There were flies. I saw what looked like a bird claw. I texted Doug and told him I was going to report him to the health department. He said, "You do that, and I'll say you were running it." I told him I had nothing to do with it. He said, "They'll find your name on all the delivery slips. Your signature, your address." I froze. I started Googling health code violations. Licensing. Zoning laws. Fines. Prison time. I called a lawyer friend. She asked how long this had been going on. I said 5 months. She sighed so hard it hurt through the phone. "Get out. Document everything. Do not speak to customers. If anyone asks, you are just a tenant." Put that in writing. I asked what happens if the city finds out. She said, "Depends. But best case, huge fines. Worst case, health code violations plus fraud if there's money involved." I asked if signing the slips meant I was legally liable. She said, "It's not good." So I went scorched earth. I took photos. Video. I texted Doug and said I had everything on record. And if he didn't clear out the garage in 24 hours, I'd go public. He tried to laugh it off. I told him I'd already spoken to a lawyer. He got quiet. The next morning, everything was gone. The tape. The clipboard. Doug didn't knock. Didn't say anything. Just vanished. 2 weeks later, I got a letter from the city. Someone had filed a complaint about unlicensed food distribution from the property. I called the number. I told them I was a tenant, not an owner, and that I had nothing to do with any food business. I sent photos, emails, texts. They believed me. But they told me the property was on a watch list, that if anything like this happened again, there would be fines. And I could be evicted. I haven't seen Doug since. I don't know where he went. The downstairs unit is dark. No one answers. I keep getting mail addressed to Doug Meats, LC. I return it unopened. I just want this all to go away. But every now and then, someone still knocks and asks for the duck legs. That is just so wild. It starts out so innocent, like a favor for a neighbor. But then it spirals into a whole thing about an illegal frozen meat empire. The audacity of Doug to put your name on everything and then threaten you is on a whole different level. And the detail about the exploded meat in the bird claw. That is a nightmare. It is a good thing you got out of there. You were in way over your head. That's a story that sticks with you. See what the next one has in store. I crashed a stranger's family reunion because I thought it was my girlfriend's barbecue, and it took me 3 hours to realize I was in the wrong backyard. This happened 2 weekends ago, and I still don't know how to explain it without sounding like the dumbest man alive. Every time I start telling someone, I feel like I should lead with a disclaimer. I was sober. Completely sober. Just a guy trying to do the right thing and bring a bowl of pasta salad to his girlfriend's family barbecue. That's all. To set the scene, I'd been dating Lauren for about 4 months. We weren't serious, but serious enough that I'd met her friends, slept over at her place maybe once or twice a week, and started following her around on Instagram. Not on purpose. She followed me first. I panicked and followed back. Lauren had been talking about this barbecue since the second date. Apparently her family throws one every year at her cousin's house out in the suburbs. Massive yard, she said. Keg and a kiddie pool. Her dad rents a bounce house for the kids even though half of us are adults now. So when she invited me to come and meet everyone, I said yes. Easy yes. I figured this was the next step. Get through the weird small talk, impress a couple of uncles, leave early if it got awkward. I even volunteered to bring something. She said pasta salad's always a win, and that was that. She sent me the address the night before. I remember looking it up and thinking it was farther out than I expected, about 45 minutes from the city, but whatever, I had a full tank and a decent playlist. Now, here's where it starts to unravel. The next morning, I make the pasta salad. Nothing fancy rotini. Cherry tomatoes, olives, mozzarella balls, Italian dressing from a bottle. I put it in one of those big metal bowls you only use for potlucks, wrapped it in plastic wrap, grabbed a 6-pack of beer and headed out around noon. The drive was fine. Sunny. I got to the address Lauren sent me around 1, parked on the street, and saw a bunch of people in the backyard through a chain-link fence. Bounce house? Check. Grill smoke? Check. Folding tables covered in aluminum trays? Check. I could already hear music and someone shouting, "Bobby, don't you dare go near that sprinkler with a plate." Felt like I was in the right place. I walked around the side of the house and into the backyard like I'd done it 100 times. No one looked at me. That should have been the first red flag. In movies, people always go silent when a stranger shows up. In real life, not so much. Everyone just kept doing their thing. There were maybe 40 people in the yard. Older folks in lawn chairs, teenagers half looking at their phones, kids throwing water balloons. I smiled at a few people, nodded, held up the bowl like, "Look, I brought something," and made a beeline for the folding table. A woman I didn't recognize said, "Oh, perfect. Put it over there next to the diddled eggs." I did. Still didn't see Lauren. I figured she was inside, maybe helping with something. I cracked a beer and wandered toward the grill, where a guy in a Kiss the Chef apron was flipping burgers. I said, "Smells amazing," and he said, "You just get here?" I said, "Yeah, just parked." We nodded like two men who had nothing else to say. I stood there for a few minutes pretending to look for someone, while really just scanning faces, and trying to figure out why nobody looked familiar. Lauren had showed me pictures of her cousins. I remembered one of them had sleeve tattoos. Another had dyed purple hair. Nobody here fit that description. I started to feel weird, not panicked, just off. Like showing up to a party on the wrong day. So I pulled out my phone and texted Lauren. "Where are you?" No reply. I checked the address she sent me. Same one I'd typed into GPS. I walked toward the house, figuring maybe she was inside. The back door was open, people going in and out with plates, so I followed. It was cooler inside, quieter. I passed a bathroom, a coat rack, a very tan man yelling at a speaker that wasn't working. Still, no Lauren. I was halfway through a hallway when a woman with short grey hair tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Sweetie, are you from Margie's side or the Pennsylvania crew?" That's when I knew. I smiled and said, "Pennsylvania," which is insane because I've never been to Pennsylvania in my life. She said, "Well, you must know Jeannie then." And I said, "Of course, love Jeannie." There is no Jeannie. I was lying now, and I knew it, but I didn't know how to stop. I walked back outside and tried texting Lauren again. Nothing. Called her, straight to voicemail. I considered leaving, just grabbing the pasta salad and slipping out. But then a kid with ketchup on his face ran past me and screamed, "It's the bouncy house king." And suddenly, like 5 children started chanting, "Bouncy house king," and pointing at me. I still have no idea why. I smiled, gave a little bow, and then realized one of them had dumped a water balloon in the pasta salad bowl. Great. Now I couldn't leave without looking like I'd just brought wet garbage to someone's family function. So I stayed. I don't know how to explain what happened next, but it felt like I'd stepped into some alternate reality. I kept expecting Lauren to show up, to laugh and say, "Oh my God, you idiot, this is the wrong party." But she didn't. I sat down with a plate of food I didn't recognize and listened to a man named Tony talk about how he once sold a set of golf clubs to Joe Biden's nephew. I joined a game of horseshoes. I complimented a woman's potato salad. I even gave a toast, somehow, not a real toast, but one of those moments where someone hands you a beer and says, "Say something funny," and you panic and blurt out, "To Jeannie." And everyone cheers like you just won an award. By then, it felt like I'd crossed a point of no return. Like if I confessed now, I'd ruin someone's day. I imagined the disappointment on that grey-haired woman's face when she found out the Pennsylvania crew had been infiltrated. Around 4:30, my phone buzzed. A text, "Hey, are you still coming? We just fired up the grill." I stared at it. Then I looked around. I was 2 streets over. I'd typed the address in wrong. Swapped a 6 for an 8. Simple as that. I never replied to Lauren. I just said goodbye to Tony, waved at the kids, thanked the guy in the apron, and left. On the way out, someone shouted, "See you at Christmas." And I said, "Wouldn't miss it." I drove the 2 blocks to the correct house, parked, walked around the side, and finally saw Lauren standing next to the grill holding a beer, smiling like nothing had happened. I nodded and said, "Traffic was insane. Holy crap, no way. That is the single most insane and hilarious story I have ever heard. I cannot believe you stayed for 3 whole hours." The fact that you just committed to the bit and became the bouncy house king and gave a toast to Jeannie, who doesn't even exist. That is a level of social bravery I don't think I'll ever have. You went to the wrong party and made some friends. That is a wild thing to do. I can't even. That is an absolutely wild story. Anyway, let's hear the next one. That is a heavy one. It starts so simple, just a favor for a neighbor. Then it spirals into a whole emotional weight you never signed up for. The audacity of a little kid to just show up with a dead animal in a shoebox and a plan for a wake is something else entirely. You were just trying to be a good neighbor, and you ended up holding a flashlight for a eulogy and reburying him. The little popsicle stick cross and the tea party, and then the quiet final act of her tearing the photo in half. It's so much sadder than it should be. You tried to do the right thing, to protect this little girl, but you just couldn't save him from whatever it was out there. And you know, that is kind of the story of all of this. It's all just normal people getting in way over their heads with things that seem easy at first. They are the kinds of stories that just prove that no matter how hard you try, you can't control what is going to happen. It always gets messy, and that is where the real story begins. Thanks for sharing these stories with me. This is a good place to leave it for the night. Thank you so much for stopping in. Take care and have a great night. I'll see you next time.